This is the W5FC repeater, PL110.9.
Good evening, everyone. This is Virginia. My call sign is MD5S, and I will be starting Skynet in a little over 5 minutes. So if you need to use the repeater for anything between now and then, please do so, and hopefully you will also join us for Skynet at 9 o'clock. Thanks a lot. I'll see you soon. This is MD5S.
Meeting on the air first and third Sunday, 7 p.m., W5FC.
Mr. Chairman, I need to make myself very clear. If we uplink now, Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
That is correct, sir.
Skynet.
Good evening, everyone. This is NV5F. My name is Virginia, and I'll be your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with the priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time by using the post sign break and your call sign. Is there any emergency or priority traffic at this time? This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from the net control. That would be me. And stations are reminded to please ID at the end of your transmission. This weekly net operates on 146.88 megahertz with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5FC-R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topic, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio and video links are available online. Go to W5FC.org right now for the complete list. The sooner we're to tell others about this popular net. You can now check into the net electronically by going to the club website, W5FC.org, right there at the top on the Skynet announcement. Look for tonight's Skynet announcement and the hot link to check in. We will acknowledge you on the air, and don't worry, if you want to check in the regular old-fashioned way via voice over the air or an Echolink, we will continue to do that as well. All amateur operators are welcome. You need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. This net is 90 minutes long and is structured in several parts. First, we'll have general announcements. Then we'll have Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events. Next, National Space Society events. Next, discussion topic of the evening. And after that, we'll have What's Up with Chaz. Then we'll have Space Exploration and Space History. Constellation of the Week. Space Launches of the Week. Visible satellite passages over the next couple days. And if time permits, we can have astronomical Q&A and a 73 round. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. And we currently have the following people checked in via the website. We have K5ICX, Tom in Corpus Christi, Texas, in T5TM, Tony in East Dallas, KF5JHA, Chaz, and Bob the Cat in Mesquite, AG9SC, Antonio in Dallas, NV5F, that's me, Virginia, somewhere near the planet Adrian, AA5AH, Robert in Richardson, N5BB, Bill in Irving, and N5LIG, Dale in Dallas. Okay, now let's start with some voice check-ins, starting with short time. If you are a short time check-in for Skynet and you want to get on the list before you have to go, please come now with your call sign, your name, and your location. Okay, nothing heard for a short time. Next we'll go with general RF check-ins. If you would like to check into Skynet, via RF. Please come now with your call sign, your name, and your location.
This is Whiskey 5, Bacon, Lettuce, Tomato, W5, Bill, Garland.
This is Whiskey 5, Golf, Uniform, Sierra, Gus, far, far northeast Dallas.
This is Kilo, Golf 5, Uniform, Foxtrot, Romeo, Jacob in Farmers Branch.
Kilo 5, Juliet, Delta Whiskey, John and Coppell. Kilo, Foxtrot 5, Zulu, Bravo, Lima, Bill, Farmers Branch.
This is Kilo, Golf 9, Oscar, Quebec, Kilo, Dave, and Garland.
Okay, that's a pretty nice group to start with. We have W5BLT, Bill in Garland, W5GUF, Gus in Dallas, far, far northeast Dallas, KG5UFR, Jacob in Farmers Branch, K5JDW, John in Coppell, KF5ZBL, Bill in Farmers Branch, and KG5OQK, Dave in Garland. And Dave, I got you, but your audio is really low, so you might want to check your gain or your microphone connection. Okay, any more RF check-ins? Please come now. Call sign, name, and location.
This is Whiskey, Bravo, 4, Mike, Foxtrot, India, WB4MFI, Ted, Dallas, low power.
Okay, and we've added W4MFI, Ted in Dallas. Thank you, Ted. Let's see, what's next? We have some Echolink check-ins. All right. So let's see, we've got several people on Echolink who are not checked in anywhere else. So anybody here on Echolink, would you like to check in via voice? Please come now.
This is KE0TWQ, John Boy, Kansas City.
Okay, we've got KE0TWQ, John Boy in Kansas City. Thank you so much for checking in to Skynet this evening. We have also got Billy, KF5PBS, and we've got Jimmy, KD5LQD. Let's see, I'll check you guys in, and it looks like everyone else here on Echolink is also checked in somewhere else, like online. So we'll add those other two. All right, now, round 4, free-for-all. Any mode, anywhere. If you would like to check into Skynet, please come now. All right, well, that's a good group to start with, so let's begin the net. First, we'll have general announcements. I've got to say my presentation topic is going to be hopefully kind of short and sweet and adding to my topic from last month, just kind of a little bit more, and hoping to hear a lot of Artemis II news. I decided to keep my topic as is, knowing that we would have a lot of enthusiastic reports on the Artemis II mission, which splashed down safely yesterday evening. It was very exciting. So if there are any, after we get through general announcements and get to other news and stuff, hopefully everybody will have a lot to say on that this evening. So, along those lines, do we have any general announcements for this evening's net? These can be ham, astronomical, space, or of general interest to licensed hams. Please come now.
November Tango 5, Tango Mike.
Okay, Tony, NC5 PM, come on with your announcement.
Thank you, Virginia. Tonight's Afterglow movie discussion will focus on The Stranger from 1973. It was kind of draggy, but at least it was in color, and we've all seen worse. Join us at 10:30-ish. Whether you've seen the movie or not, all are welcome. The Dallas Amateur Radio Club Lecture and Lab for April 25th, at least as of the club meeting last Tuesday, is still somewhat up in the air. It might be an antenna build. It might be a play day. It could even be a cookout. Nobody knows. We're not sure. Please watch carefully at W5FC.org for more information. And, of course, as soon as we know for sure, we'll be announcing it on the repeater. I have run into a couple of people this weekend who are confused by the calendar of this month because it started on a Wednesday. So please take note, there is no Races Net or meeting on the air this Sunday. Those things will be happening on Sunday, April 19th. That is actually the third Sunday. I know, it feels odd. So Sunday, April 19th for Races and meeting on the air. But if you need more club nets, don't worry. MCOM 101 will be taking place this Monday. You don't have to be a member of Aries or Races or Texar or any group at all to participate. You just have to enjoy or be interested in public service communications. That's MCOM 101, Emergency Communications 101, this Monday at 7 p.m. local time on this repeater. Thank you for listening, and I hope to hear you on the air for all our nets. NT5TM.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony, and for Lecture and Lab, I vote for Cookout. Okay, let's see. This is Virginia ND5F. I'm your net control for this evening's edition of Skynet. Those were our usual announcements by Tony, and I have some more just general announcements that we do every week. First off, the AMSAT, Amateur Radio Satellite Group, has 3 nets available to Dallas residents. On Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central, you can check in to the National AMSAT net and learn all about amateur satellites and how you can use them for amateur radio. This net brings the most up-to-date information on amateur satellites. You will need Echolink installed and to be registered on Echolink, and you can find the net under Group and *AMSAT*. Also, a live radio audio link is available on their website at www.amsatnet.com. This net originates in Houston, Texas. There are also 2 local nets available in Dallas. Both of these encourage active check-ins. You can ask questions of the net controls as well as others who are checked in. The AMSAT Net East, Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, is every Tuesday at 8 p.m. on this repeater, 146.88 megahertz, PL 110.9. That's Tuesdays. Tom, N5HYT, is the usual net control, and all are welcome to check in. The first Tuesday of the month is DARC Club Night, so there's no AMSAT-Net East that night. Dallas AMSAT-Net West is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater at 147.140 megahertz, MTL tone 110.9, positive offset. And speaking of nets, there are a lot of nets on this repeater. We do have a schedule. You can go to W5FC.org to find the net schedule. Needless to say, there is a net on here almost every single night. Saturday night, where we are now, is the night of nets. And we start at 7 o'clock with TechNet, and we have Skynet at 9. And then if you want to stay up really late and talk about movies, we have Afterglow at 10:30. Every evening at 6:30, we have the ARRL NTS traffic net, and almost every Monday night there's some kind of cool net. Please check the schedule for all of our nifty nets. Speaking of movies, it's time for tonight's Afterglow info with our fearless Afterglow General Tom General, KE5ICX. Please share with us your very, very accurate synopsis for tonight's movie.
Here's my highly accurate synopsis. Neil Stryker was a celebrity. He just didn't know it until his return to Earth, or what he thought was Earth. Two things were very prevalent. Everyone kept calling him Zephyrin Cochrane, the creator of the warp drive, an imaginary propulsion device from a failed TV show that everyone seems to think is real. And two, the only cars on this Earth are made by Chrysler Corporation. One thing was sure, though, they sure were noisy. He'd pick up the phone to call Kate Kennedy. A recorded voice immediately blared into the receiver as soon as he heard the dial tone. To ensure the perfect authoritarian state, this call may be monitored for better authoritarian rules. Please listen carefully, as some of our key goals may have changed. Press 1 if you're confused astronaut seeking to call Mission Control to report your failed mission. Press 2 if you're Zephyrin Cochrane, father of the warp drive. Press 3 if you believe you might have been cast in a TV series pilot without knowing it. And press 0 if you'd like to speak to the director of this movie. Stryker pressed 0. That certainly seemed to be the logical choice in this illogical world. And as Tony mentioned, the stranger from 1973, it indeed was a pilot, a 90-minute pilot for that matter, for a television series that sounds mysteriously like The Fugitive. Back to you, Net Control. This is KE5ICX. Thanks, Virginia.
Okay, thank you, Tom. I have also seen this movie. If Tony has seen it. We'll talk about it at 10:30. Okay, you can keep up with all DARC events, nets, and activities by going to the club website, W5FC.org. We currently have the following people who've been added to the online. We did add KF5PDS Billy. He's also on Echolink. So thanks, Billy, for joining us. All right. And I'll now take any additional check-ins on any mode. Please come now with your call sign, your name, and your location.
This is November 5, Oscar Foxtrot, Clay, and Mesquite.
Kilo November 5, Echo, Echo, Echo. Al from Allen.
November 5, Hotel Yankee Papa, Tom from Irving. Hi, all.
Okay, we've added N50F Clay for Mesquite, KN5 Echo 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 Al from Allen, and N5HYP Tom from Irving. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And now it's time for Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas, where and when you can look through a telescope with our illustrious Chaz, KN5JHA. Take it away, Chaz.
Wow, illustrious. That's wonderful. I have to convince Bob the Cat to call me that from now on. Okay, so on April the 24th is the next Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas Club meeting. The meeting is going to be held at 7:30 p.m. in person at the University of Texas at Dallas, and also there's a Zoom component for members. The featured speaker is going to be John Steele, Dr. John Steele. His topic is going to be early history of astronomy. Wonder how far back he's going to go. Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas also hosts Saturday night public observing sessions in this area. Skynet was picked to be on Saturday nights, so there could be an opportunity for live reports from the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas public observing sessions. On the second Saturday of the month, that would be tonight, the stargazing is held at Frisco. Well, if you looked outside recently, tonight's stargazing was canceled due to the clouds. You can check the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas website at texasastro.org for up-to-date information and details about meetings and public observing sessions. This is KF5JJ, back for net control.
Okay, thank you, Chaz. Appreciate the announcement. And this is NV5S, Virginia, net control for Skynet. Next we have National Space Society events and activities with Bill N5CB.
Thank you, Virginia. Today was a very busy day for National Space Societies. The last couple of days have been, so I've got quite a few items. Now, this is N5DB. I happen to be the membership director and the vice president of the North Texas chapter of the National Space Society. The National Space Society is a nonprofit group based in the U.S. which is interested in the exploration and development of space and the creation of a spacefaring civilization. Our local National Space Society chapter website is ntx.nss.org. Our group also has an active Facebook page. Just type National Space Society of North Texas into the search box. The North Texas chapter of the National Space Society meets at 3:30 p.m. on the second Sunday afternoon of each month at Spring Creek Barbecue on Highway 183 in Irving. Our next chapter meeting will be tomorrow, Sunday, April 12th. Local chapter member Bill Ledbetter will present Bug-Eyed Monsters versus the World Builders, why humanity might not want to settle on planets. On the last Friday evening of each month at 6 to 8 p.m., the National Space Society North Texas chapter sponsors a social event called Space Rendezvous at Cheddar's Restaurant, 700 West Highway 635 in Irving. You do not need to be a member of any organization to attend. The next Space Rendezvous will be on Friday, April the 24th. Let me verify that in my calendar. Yes, it's barely the last Friday of the month, April 24th. Every year, our local National Space Society North Texas chapter tries to participate in an event to commemorate Yuri's Night, the anniversary of the first crewed spacecraft. The first crewed space flight in Vostok 1 by the Soviet Union cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin on April the 12th, 1961. Gagarin completed one orbit of Earth, with his flight taking 108 minutes. By achieving this major milestone for the Soviet Union amidst the space race, he became an international celebrity and was awarded many medals and titles, including his country's highest distinction, Hero of the Soviet Union. This afternoon, our local National Space Society chapter members participate in the Yuri's Night, actually one night early or one afternoon early, event at the UT Arlington Planetarium. Our chapter president, Ken Ruffin, gave a talk about an update on NASA and commercial spaceflight, just a general overview. A later event this evening at the UT Arlington Public Telescope was canceled due to cloudy weather. Our chapter meeting again is tomorrow, so that will be on the actual anniversary of Yuri's accomplishment. Mark your calendar for this coming Tuesday, April the 14th. There'll be a presentation by Dr. Margaret Weidekamp, Chair of the Smithsonian's National Air and Space Museum's Department of Space History and the curator of the museum's Social and Cultural History of Spaceflight collection. She will explore how the Smithsonian preserves the cultural memory of spaceflight. This program will be held at the Irving Arts Center, 3333 North MacArthur Boulevard in Suite 200 at 7 p.m. Admission is free. Again, this is the upcoming Tuesday, April the 14th at 7 p.m. They have a way that you can sign up, but admission is free, so you can probably just show up also. If anybody has interest in this event from the Smithsonian in Irving, please let me know. The Irving Museum has a museum which is a member of the Smithsonian's affiliate group. The main space event of interest to the National Space Society this past was the very successful Artemis II mission, which looped around the moon on a free return trajectory. The 4 astronauts, Reed Weissman, the commander, Victor Glover, the pilot, Christina Cook, the mission specialist, and Jeremy Hansen, another mission specialist from the Canadian Space Agency, safely splashed down in the Pacific Ocean near San Diego yesterday evening. This mission marks the first crewed flight of the Artemis program. Artemis III is planned to be a docking test mission in mid-2027. That's right, next year. An Orion capsule, identical to the one that launched this last week, will dock with an HLS, that's a Human Landing System, moonlander, and in Earth orbit. SpaceX is providing their Starship HLS, and Blue Origin is providing their Blue Moon HLS. If both of them are available, they're going to try to dock to both of them. If one gets seriously delayed, they'll only try docking with whichever one is available. Again, this will be in Earth orbit. It's not clear yet whether it be low Earth orbit or high Earth orbit. And this will be sometime in 2027, probably in mid-2027. This is N5BB. Artemis IV, the next mission, is planned for the following year, 2028. It'll be the first human landing on the moon in over 50 years. Artemis V is planned for later in 2028 as a follow-up human moon landing mission. These missions will land near the south pole of the moon. NASA is also now actively planning to establish a moon base in the near future, just a few years from now. The big National Space Society event each year is the International Space Development Conference, ISDC. ISDC 2026 will be held in Tysons Corner, Virginia, which is not far from Washington, D.C. I will be there. The dates are June 4th through 7th, 2026. Early bird discounted registration ends this upcoming Wednesday on April 15th. Find out more at isdc.nss.org. If you have any questions about these many items or the National Space Society, please contact Bill N5BB at my QRZ-listed email address or at space@byram.net. Thank you very much. Back to you, Virginia. This is N5BB.
N5BB, this is NV5F. Thank you very much, Bill. That was good. Lots of good stuff about Artemis and lots of cool space things happening. All right. Well, now it's my turn. Time for the discussion topic of the evening. It always falls to net control to bring something interesting. And like I said, I'm going to try to keep this kind of short and sweet, but it actually has a tie into Artemis, which I will mention later on. My topic is going to be a continuation of last month. It's Project Hail Mary and Special Relativity Part 2. All right, well, it's hard to believe it's been 4 weeks since I brought you Part 1 of Special Relativity using Project Hail Mary, the film and the book, as context. The film opened to much enjoyment and fascination the week of March 20th. I will not tell you how many times I've seen it already. It broke some box office records in the process and has restored the hope in many that it is possible to have a good old regular movie that's not a sequel or a remake or a reboot of some niche franchise. In fact, it has had encore dates added at the 70mm IMAX screen in Dallas, and it's actually playing tonight through Wednesday night. If you want to see some neat science fiction and you don't mind staying up a little late, seeing this one on the 50-foot high IMAX screen is well worth it. As I said last time, science fiction often contains story elements which turn upon the idea of special relativity, especially in regard to time dilation. The idea that for someone traveling near the speed of light, time slows down significantly. The most notable example of the past few years is the film Interstellar, which has time dilation as a major concept in its plot. However, in all my science fiction wanderings, I don't know if I've ever found the concept of length contraction expressed well, or if at all. In fact, when I was reading Project Hail Mary, I found length contraction to be a consequential element in the plot, although it was only mentioned rather briefly. I realized at that moment that I had not heard much about this complementary aspect of special relativity. It is complementary in that if speed equals space, or length, or distance, divided by time, then if the speed of light is the constant, and time is relative, then so is space. I did study this a few years ago at the same time that I studied time dilation, but it's just not dealt with as much in science fiction, so it kind of slipped into the back of my mind until it popped up as a detail in Andy Weir's novel Project Hail Mary, where a very important character whose species does not understand anything but Newtonian physics far overestimates the amount of fuel needed to make an interstellar journey at near the speed of light. Suddenly the idea of length contraction had relevance beyond, oh, that's weird, and was a little more engaging than ever before, or like some topics in maybe an Arthur C. Clarke novel where Clarke would revel in mentioning or describing a phenomenon in physics or astrophysics which might be fascinating to the reader or a character in the story, but which was merely incidental to the plot. Clarke, I remember, was able in this way to show his prowess as a scientist and in turn to educate the reader on many esoteric topics. I reveled right alongside Clarke as well in how much I learned about space and physics via his very cool stories when I was a kid. He was a master of descriptions and beautiful explanations. While Andy Weir, who also was a Martian, seems to have a knack for making the science more accessible, albeit less poetic. As part of the process of solving the problems the main character encounters one at a time. It's not only an interesting way to tell a story full of complex things, which many authors might gloss over, but it's also not a bad way to take on life in general, one little problem at a time. This having been said, even Weir left length contraction mostly untouched as far as explanations go. It was to be taken on faith the way we do with the crazy relativity time stuff. and I was scratching my head thinking, I know I learned this one a few years back, but I can't recall just how it works. I'll have to revisit it. And so here we are. I will attempt to tackle this astronomically relevant and mind-bending topic in reference to last month's presentation, starting with the complementary nature of length dilation. In fact, you might want to go back to 4 weeks ago on the Skynet YouTube channel and revisit that one later after having heard this one. I think over the years we've become accustomed to the phenomenon that time is different as one approaches the speed of light, since it is a dimension through which we are ever moving in one direction, and it is rather intangible. So it's okay for time to be mysterious, since even in the Newtonian world, we perceive it differently depending on the situation. I mean, we're having so much fun right now that time is just flying by. But the idea of length being subject to our velocity is more of a leap of faith. How can the speed you're traveling affect the length of your ship or the distance you have to travel to reach your destination? Believe it or not, at speeds that high, there would be a tangible, viewable difference which complements the time dilation effect. If you recall from last time that time is normal from the stationary frame of reference, such as from Earth. However, with length contraction, an observer on Earth will see a rapidly moving spacecraft as shorter than does the astronaut inside the craft, for whom everything will appear normal, while time for him is passing more slowly and time for the observer on Earth is passing normally. Everything balances because of the constant speed of light. In fact, the fun formula to calculate length contraction is very similar to the one for time dilation. It's simply an inverse ratio to the Lorentz transform formula for time dilation. And if you want to see all this live, you can see a graphic of the fun formula and other fun things on the YouTube version of this net, which is running right now on the Skynet 2 channel. Okay, so here's where it gets really fun. When the space traveler who's nearing the speed of light looks outside, even though his ship seems the normal length on the inside, he will find that the objects which are in his direct line of travel or directly behind him are closer by the same ratio at which time is passing more slowly. And of course, this change is based on his increasing or decreasing speed. Not only is the distance in front and behind him compressed, the stars and the planets themselves would appear this way, just as the spaceship will be compressed lengthwise from the point of view of Earth. Another interesting thing is that the only dimension which gets contracted is the length in the direction of travel. So a receding or approaching planet or star would begin to flatten out like a pancake as the speed approaches the speed of light. So imagine if one has calculated a trip to Tau Ceti with a good old-fashioned plan to accelerate halfway and then decelerate the other half, the last half of the trip decelerates. It might be rather confusing when the distance to the destination is getting shorter much too quickly as one is approaching the speed of light, and what's supposed to be halfway has come much too soon. It could even seem as if one has exceeded the speed of light in order to go so far so fast. He could begin decelerating far too early, and then as he does so, the destination would gradually get further away again. This phenomenon figures importantly into Andy Weir's novel, but I won't tell you exactly why. Just go read it. So while the Hail Mary is 47 meters in length, while it is at 95% the speed of light from the point of view of an outside observer, it will be only 14.7 meters long, but it will remain its normal width of about 8 meters wide. Lambda, or the ratio of the difference of these lengths, is 0.31225. This is the same ratio, actually it's inverse, used to calculate the time dilation for the trip from Earth to Tau Ceti in my presentation last month. as with last time, I did show my work if you want to see it on YouTube, which you can now see on the video version of this. To Dr. Grace, who is in the Hail Mary, the ship will remain 47 meters long since he and the ship are moving at the same velocity. But when he's at 0.95 C, if he wakes up from his induced travel coma and measures his distance to Tau Ceti, he would need to divide it by this ratio, 0.31225, to know how far he has left to travel from the point of view of Earth and the rest of the galaxy. I know, it's super weird. So when he's halfway there, about 6.5 light years away from Tau Ceti, his sensors will tell him that it's a little over 2 light years away from him, which adds up with his time dilation of about 4 years between Earth and Tau Ceti. Now, with all his acceleration and deceleration, there's no way I can begin to grasp all the math, let alone explain it. Andy Weir actually did all of it, accounting for general relativity and gravity and all that jazz. In fact, if 0.95 C is the Hail Mary's average travel speed, at halfway, it could be going even faster than 0.95 C, and the distance to Tau Ceti would be even shorter at that moment. I know, super weird. So I can imagine how confounding all this would really be if one were not accustomed to setting an absolute speed limit for light, or if the speed of light was known but not the nature of time dilation and length contraction. One could end up quite confused, and I hope at this point that you, gentle listeners, are not too terribly confused. If you are, I understand. I have found this topic, even though it builds on the last one, to be quite challenging. I hope that you have too, and I hope that you're intrigued enough to pursue it further. What's funny is that in the past 4 weeks, since my last presentation, a number of articles which are similar in subject to these 2 installments of mine have popped up online. In fact, I found one on a web publication called The Conversation to be quite good. It's entitled Einstein's Theories Fuel the Drama in Primary. And I will finish up by quoting it, as it has resonated with what I've said in this presentation as well as the previous one. And this is what the article reads. Science fiction is one of the few avenues through which concepts from relativity and astrophysics enter the mainstream public discourse. By brilliantly engaging with these concepts as part of such a compelling story, Project Hail Mary may just inspire a whole new generation to study these subjects and perhaps even make new discoveries of their own. So in the tradition of films such as 2001 and Interstellar, Project Hail Mary has definitely got people thinking and talking about all kinds of things. And space travel is certainly one of them. Another cool thing, a couple cool things I'll add here about the movie is that it was actually viewed by the Artemis II astronauts and their families while they were in quarantine. They were given a special link to stream the movie, Hail Mary, while they were preparing for their lunar flyby. So they were actually pretty enthused about it and actually got to speak about it from space. Another really neat thing is that the movie has some actual genuine astrophotography in it. I was impressed by not only the visual effects, which are beautiful and use absolutely zero green screen. There's a lot of practical effects in it as well. So I was very impressed by that, but then I found out later that a certain part of the movie has some genuine images of space in it, and I was also impressed by the fact that it has an actual use of the Milky Way as a background. I get tired of seeing so many space movies where space is just black with little white dots everywhere and stars. The stars in space movies often have no color, and there's often somehow they never see the Milky Way out in space, which thinks they see it there better than anywhere else. So I was impressed by that. It's a beautiful film. I encourage everybody to see it on the biggest screen they can. It is a absolute feast for space nerds. So Anyway, that's it for me this week for my presentation. Does anyone out there have any questions or comments for tonight's presentation? Please come now with your call sign. Okay, well, this is Virginia, ND5F, Net Control for Skynet. Thank you for enjoying my presentation this evening. And now it's time for, speaking of stuff in space, it's time for What's Up with Chaz, KF5JHA.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you very much for the topic tonight. Oh, I haven't done anything with that since The Ohio State University with my physics and astronomy classes. And I'm thinking, while you were giving the information, of creating a new business. The GLP-1 drugs, that their injections and our pills are a way of doing making people skinnier. If we travel faster and faster and faster, maybe we can get skinnier too. I think that's a new business I'm going to start. Have to travel close to the speed of light. Okay. Slide Master, slide number 2. I'm talking about slides. We have a video version of Skynet. On Echolink is a chat version, but there's also a YouTube version. Go to W5FC.org and click on the link for the YouTube version, and you can get the videos of what we're doing. So this is KF5JJ, and we call this segment of Skynet What's Up, because it's all about what has gone on astronomically over the last couple of weeks and what will take place over the next couple of weeks and beyond. Slide Master, slide number 3, please. We've talked about the predicted nova of the star T Corona Borealis, which may erupt at any time. It is currently at a brightness of 10th magnitude, I just checked a little bit ago, which is much too faint to be seen with just your 2 eyes. T Corona Borealis was supposed to go nova more than a year and a half ago. Well, one recent prediction was for it to go nova on November the 10th, 2025. Well, that didn't happen. So another prediction is on June the 25th of this year, plus or minus a few days. Now, when it does go nova, T Corona Borealis could become as bright as the North Star, which is 2nd magnitude. I can see the North Star with just my 2 eyes from a very light Palooza location here in Mesquite, Texas. Slide Master, slide number 4, please. This image of the sun was taken on April the 9th, 2026, from the website spaceweather.com. The large sunspot complexes on the sun are at times so large that you can just use your solar eclipse glasses to see them. The sun is just past its 11-year solar maximum. We're not quite sure when the solar maximum occurred, but it was probably sometime in 2025. Analyzing the data will determine when that month was. I presented information on the solar cycle about 4 months ago on Skynet. Slide Master, slide number 5, please. The 3rd quarter moon was on April the 9th. That's just a few days ago. So the current phase of the moon is a waning crescent. New moon is on April the 17th. On April the 19th, the moon is at perigee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth at a distance of 361,639 kilometers. 1st quarter moon phase is on April the 23rd. Full moon is on May the 1st. On May the 4th, the moon is at apogee, which is the point in the moon's orbit that is furthest from the Earth at a distance of 405,839 kilometers. Slide Master, slide number 6, please. So on April 11th of this year, there's a conjunction of the moon and the planet Pluto. Wait. That's now in the southeastern morning sky. Oh, that was this morning. Well, maybe you could have seen it. No, I was too cloudy to see that. Slide Master, slide number 7. On April the 15th, tax day, there's a conjunction of the moon the planet Mars, the planet Mercury, the planet Saturn, the planet Neptune, Vesta, that's a minor planet or asteroid, Pallas, that's a minor planet and asteroid, and a comet, 141 PD McColt, in the eastern morning sky. It's a crowded morning sky. If you don't see this video version, you've got to figure it out. I use something called, well, I'll get to that in a little bit. Slide master, slide number 8. On April the 19th, there's a conjunction of the Moon, Venus, the planet Uranus, Ceres, that's an asteroid, Hebe, that's an asteroid, and the Pleiades star cluster in the western evening sky. You'll need to get a pair of binoculars or a telescope to see the minor planets or the asteroids, and also the planet Uranus. I've seen all of those things with just a pair of binoculars, even sometimes inside the city. Pretty interesting to see. Slide master, slide number 9. On April the 20th, there's a conjunction of Mars, Mercury, Saturn, Neptune, Vesta. Oh, here's the whole boatload of things again, and a comet in the eastern morning sky. Slide master, slide number 10. On the night of April 21st, 22nd, it's the peak of the Lyrid meteor showers. That could produce up to, well, between 18 to up to 90 meteors per hour. Now, how many is it going to produce this year? Who knows? The best time to observe meteors is usually the hour before dawn, because that's the side of the Earth that is running into the debris. If you want to get more information about meteors and meteor showers, you can visit the International Meteor Organization at IMO.net or the American Meteor Society at AMSmeteors.org. Slide master, slide number 11. On April the 22nd, there's a conjunction of the Moon, the bright planet Jupiter, which is almost overhead right now, and the bright star Pollux in the western evening sky. And this is KF5JJ, and this is Skynet. Slide master, slide number 12. Now, do any of you out there in Radio Land have a question? Or maybe you have need a fill on some information. Or maybe you just have a general astronomy question. My degree's in astrophysics, I might be able to answer it. Or someone else here on the net might be able to answer it. Come now with your call sign if you have a question or need a fill. Well, not hearing anything. Slide master, slide number 13. So as the moon wanes currently, so do these words of this segment of Skynet. Stay safe, keep well. Prayer for our world is the only one where humans live right now. And until next time, actually I'll be doing another segment on Skynet in a few minutes. Keep looking up so you know what's up. And this is KF5JJ, and this is Skynet, transmitting on the W5FC repeater in Dallas, Texas, on 146.88 megahertz. Skynet is also available, as I've said before, on Echolink and also YouTube. Back to our net control, Virginia, it's yours.
Okay, thank you, Chaz, and thank you for all that information. I might have to get up early on April 15th and see an epic conjunction in the eastern sky. All right, this is Virginia, NV5S, Skynet Control. And I'm going to break for a minute and see if there are any more check-ins for Skynet. If you would like to check in over the air, please come now with your call sign, your name, and your location.
This is Kilo Golf 5, Whiskey Victor Lima, James in North Carrollton.
Okay, we've added KG5WVL, James in North Carrollton. Thank you, James. Appreciate you checking in. And I'm going to check online here real quick. And no new check-ins on. Okay, so next we have space exploration and space history with Gus, W5GUF.
Okay, thank you, Virginia. W5GUS here, Space Exploration News. It's mostly about Artemis II. Let's see, April 6th, the four-person Artemis II crew. A lot of this probably everyone knows, but I'll repeat it just in case. April 6th, the Artemis crew aboard the Orion spacecraft traveled farther from Earth than any humans in history, surpassing the record set by Apollo 13 in 1970. The crew reached a maximum distance of over 250,000 miles from Earth. And during that phase, the spacecraft performed a close flyby, passing roughly 4,000 miles above the lunar surface. This milestone marked the first time humans have visited the far side of the moon since 1972. The crew beamed back stunning high-definition photos and video of the lunar surface, which never seen before with the human eyes. All right, the second of three, another Artemis story. The Integrity capsule successfully navigated behind the far side of the moon during a roughly 7-hour action-packed encounter. During the swing around the moon, the crew observed a total solar eclipse where the sun disappeared behind the lunar body. They conducted critical proximity operation demonstrations to test navigation and handling of the spacecraft in deep space. This flyby utilized a fuel-efficient, free return trajectory that harnesses the moon's gravity to slingshot the spacecraft back toward Earth. The maneuver was a critical test of the systems needed to return astronauts to the lunar surface. Okay, following the successful lunar flyby, the Artemis II crew began preparing their equipment for the return journey, including securing exercise gear and closing out the crew cabin. The crew conducted final system checks on the Orion spacecraft and held a live press conference on April 9th, where they discussed their experiences on the trip. Throughout the return trip, they conducted key tests to verify systems for future longer duration Artemis missions, and I hope one of those was to correct or get the bathroom, the toilet corrected. $22 million worth, it didn't work. The crew tested manual flying capabilities and maneuverability, ensuring all systems were ready for high-speed atmospheric re-entry. The mission continued to follow a safe return path, ensuring a planned space splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. And after a 10-day journey around the moon, the crew of 4 returned safely to Earth, marking the first crewed lunar mission in over 50 years. The Integrity capsule endured an intense re-entry through the atmosphere at speeds reaching nearly 25,000 miles an hour and temperatures of approximately 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Following the high-speed descent, the sequence of 11 parachutes slowed the craft down to a gentle 17 miles an hour for its final water landing at 8:07 p.m. Eastern, 7:07 p.m. our time. Recovery teams from the U.S. Navy quickly retrieved the astronauts and transported them to the USS John Murtha for medical evaluation. And that's it for that topic. We have space-related birthdays next, and it's a short list, just about 4, I think. birthday April 4th, 1964, Satoshi Furukawa was born April 4th, 1964. He was on the Soyuz, spent 167 days on the ISS in 2011 conducting science experiments. On April 11th, 1955, Piers Sellers was a climate scientist who operated the robotic arm on STS-112, 121, and 132 to install components on the ISS. Okay, October 9th, 1963, Timothy Copra was born, April 9th, 1963. He commanded the ISS Expedition 47 and performed 3 spacewalks, and he was also on the Soyuz. And last birthday in this week, Donald Holmquist, April 7th, 1939. He didn't have any flights, but he was a NASA Group 6 scientist astronaut who trained for Skylab but did not fly. Okay, a couple interesting things here on this week in space history. April 4th, 83, NASA launched the Space Shuttle Challenger for the first time. It was the second orbiter in the fleet, and during the mission, astronauts performed the first spacewalk to work on the payload bay. The mission deployed the Tracking and Data Relay Satellite, TDRS-1, and Challenger was destroyed 3 years later, but this flight was a milestone. Okay, April 7th, 2001, NASA launched the Mars Odyssey orbiter to map the Martian surface. It entered orbit around Mars and set a record for the longest-serving spacecraft at the planet. The probe discovered large amounts of water, ice beneath the surface of Mars, and Mars Odyssey also served as a communications relay for future Mars rovers. April 8th, 1964, NASA launched Gemini Titan 1, which was the first uncrewed test flight of the 2-person Gemini spacecraft. The mission tested the structural integrity of the Titan II launch vehicle, and the mission ensured the capsule could reach orbit safely before risking human life in a test. It orbited Earth for 3 days, confirming the design for future astronaut flights. Okay, a couple more items yet to go. April 10th, 1981, STS-1 launch attempt was scrubbed. The first launch attempt of the Space Shuttle Columbia, STS-1, was scrubbed due to a computer issue. A technical issue occurred with the primary general-purpose computers. The backup flight systems failed to synchronize with the primary computers, forcing a delay. Engineers finally fixed the software issue during the delay, and the launch occurred exactly 20 years after the first human spaceflight launch, which I guess was Yuri. Okay, last item here, April 11th, 1970. Apollo 13 launched from the Kennedy Space Center, intended to be the 3rd human landing on the moon. An oxygen tank in the service module exploded, damaging the spacecraft. That mission was aborted, becoming a rescue operation to return the crew. Astronauts Lovell, Swigert, and Hayes survived and landed in the Pacific on April 17th, about 6 days later. Okay, and with that, we will conclude this week's edition. I wanted to ask Virginia about the movie if you think, Virginia, do you think it would be good to read the book first, or just go see the movie and maybe read the book later? So with that, we'll pass it back to you, Virginia, and go on to Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week with Chaz and the jokes. Back to you, Virginia, W5GUS.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Thanks for all the good Artemis II news and all the space history and birthdays. On the book and the movie, it's hard to say. I read the book last summer, and that made me excited about the movie. But there's part of me that kind of wishes I had not known anything about it going in. So I would actually say I think it would be neat to go see the movie and enjoy it kind of without any preconceived ideas about anything. And then if you like it, read the book. It would be kind of like bonus material, because when they adapt a book into a movie, they have to leave 90% of it out. I think it's a good, faithful adaptation, and I think that it would be fun to see the movie and then get to read the book after if you like the movie. So that's my thoughts on that. And now we are going to Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week with Chaz, KF5JHA from NB5F.
Thank you again, Virginia. This is Chaz, KF5JHA. Just want to let you know about Apollo 13. Fred Hayes, the guy that got sick on Apollo 13, yep, he was here in Dallas at the Frontier Flight Museum on Moon Day a couple of years ago. You could have gotten his autograph. Yeah, he's a really cool guy. Anyway, Flight Master Flight number 14. Miss Carolyn's Constellation of the Week is named in honor of Silent Key Carolyn, KC5OZT. Carolyn contributed to Skynet each week, almost from its beginning in 2012. Yep, we've been doing Skynet since 2012. Until May of 2019, with a detailed look at one particular constellation each week. Those are about 52 easily visible constellations seen in Texas throughout the year out of the 88 total number of constellations. So Miss Carolyn covered the entire sky as seen over North Texas in a year. And in her honor, we've continued that tradition of a constellation per week and named the segment after her. Miss Carolyn's Constellations of the Week this week is actually a twofer. Pyxis, the compass, and Antlia, the pump. Pyxis, the mariner's compass, was originally a part of the ancient constellation of Argo Navis, the ship that Jason and the Argonauts traveled on. The stars in Pyxis were part of the ship's mast. Despite the long-standing tradition, in the 17th century, the French astronomer Louis Dassault remapped the stars into this new constellation. Pyxis Nautilus, the mariner's compass. Slide Master, slide number 15, the jokes of the week. Now, for those of you that are over on Echolink, you're in a chat session, you can boo or hiss or say good job on the on the jokes. Or if you're over on YouTube, you can do the same thing in the chat session. For those of you who are on radio frequency only, well, I don't know. You can just boo or hiss. Don't throw things at your radio. All right, here we go. What do you call a crocodile with a map and a compass? A crocodile with a map and a compass would be called a navigator. Oh, come on, that's funny. The letters on my compass suddenly came to life to tell me I'm going in the wrong way. Well, you fill in that blank. I couldn't believe the news. N-E-W-S. You know, north, east, west, south, news. Okay, maybe that wasn't that funny. How can you tell the compasses are intelligent? How do you tell that compasses are intelligent? Because they're all graduated. Why throw out a broken compass? Well, what's the point in keeping it? It won't point if it's broken. Okay. What's the most effective way to make it to Russia from Alaska? Well, use a compass and keep your bearings straight. If you're not a never mind. My compass broke on a hiking trip. It went south very quickly. All right, slide master, slide number 16. How do we find Pyxis? Let's begin with something familiar, Orion's belt. Draw a line from the left to the east. So we're going backwards from right to left to the east from the belt until you run into the brightest star in the sky called Sirius. Well, brightest star in the sky other than the sun, and I'm not Sirius, the star is. But continuing to the left again until, well, you continue to run into the faint stars of Pyxis. Slide master, slide number 17. Alpha Pyxis, Pyxidus, is a Beta Cepheid type variable star and is also a double star. The magnitude is 8.5. Companion is easy to see because it's about 107 arc seconds from the primary. That's quite a bit. That's almost 2 minutes of arc. The primary star appears white while the companion star is an orangey hue. Beta Pyxis, Pyxidus, is also a double star. But it's a bit more challenging to split than alpha. The companion star is fairly dim at a magnitude 12.5. That's kind of dim. There's only 12.7 arc seconds from the primary. Beta looks yellow-white through a telescope. Zeta Pyxidus is another double star. There is not much color difference between the two stars, with the spectral types of the two stars being a G4 and a G0. They are both yellow stars. Of about the same spectral class. The primary star is magnitude 5.5. The companion is magnitude 10, much fainter though. Slide master, slide number 18. NGC, which stands for New General Catalog 2627, is an open cluster. It's a bit difficult because it is not an obvious standout object in an eyepiece of a telescope. It is easier to find this object in an 8-inch telescope. This cluster is situated in the Milky Way star field, so it's not very conspicuous. The stars in the cluster are concentrated just enough, though, but when you compare it with the surrounding star field, it does stand out from the background. Slide master, slide number 19. NGC 2613 is an edge-on galaxy which is surprisingly nice to see. It is not a knock-your-socks-off object because it's not very bright, but is visible on the noticeably fuzzy streak in an 8-inch telescope and could be an edge-on spiral galaxy. Averted vision helps a lot in seeing it. What does averted vision mean? That means if you're not looking directly at it, like if you're looking at the edge of the eyepiece and it's in the center, your center of your eye is not as sensitive to faint light as the around the edges. Isn't that interesting? Slide master, slide number 20. NGC 2818, I'm laughing because Bob the cat's meowing in my ear. NGC 2818 is an open star cluster with a seemingly embedded planetary nebula similar to M46. NGC 2818 is not a true member of the cluster, in spite of how it appears. Accurate studies of proper motion and radial velocities of the star clusters of stars in the nebula show that their velocities are quite different. So the planetary nebula is a foreground object and not true cluster member. The star cluster and the planetary nebula can be observed in an 8-inch or a 10-inch telescope. And this is KF5JJ, and this is Skynet. Slide master, slide number 21. Antlia is a small, faint constellation located in the southern skies. Its name is ancient Greek word for the pump, or the air pump which it represents. Antlia does not have any myths associated with it. Antlia was created and cataloged by the French astronomer Louis de Lassalle in the 18th century, along with 13 other constellations introduced by him to fill in the void of some faint regions of the southern sky. Lassalle's constellations are mostly named for scientific instruments, and there are no myths associated with them. Antlia is a small constellation, 62nd in size, occupying only an area of 239 square degrees. Slide master, slide number 22. So how do you find Antlia? Well, let's again start with Orion's belt. Draw a line to the left or to the east. From the belt, you run into the brightest star in the sky, other than the sun, called Sirius. Again, I'm not serious, but the star is. Didn't I use that joke already? Now continue to the left again and to the east until you run into the stars of Pyxis. Now go a little bit further to the left or east, and you'll run into the faint stars of Antlia. Slide master, slide number 23. Theta Antlia is a binary star approximately 384 light years away. Consists of Theta Antlia A and a white A-type star in the main sequence. Theta Antlia B is a yellow-white F-type bright giant star. It has an apparent magnitude of 4.78. Eta Antlia is also a binary star, 106 light years distant. The bright component is a yellow-white F-type giant, an apparent magnitude of 5.2. The companion star is faint, with a magnitude of only 11.3. It is located 31 arcseconds away. Delta Antlia is also another double star, approximately 481 light years away. The brighter component has an apparent magnitude of 5.57 and is classified as a blue-white B-type main sequence star. The fainter star is a visual companion lying about 11 arcseconds away. Slide master, slide number 24. Antlia dwarf galaxy, called Pyxis G29194, is a dwarf spheroidal galaxy located about 4.3 million light years away from the Earth. It is a very faint object. It has an apparent magnitude of 16.2. You're not going to be able to see that with a telescope. You probably have to photograph it to be able to see it. It was not discovered until 1997. Slide master, slide number 25. The Antlia cluster, also known as Abell S0636, is a cluster of galaxies within the Hydra Centaurus supercluster, which in turn is the closest neighboring supercluster to the Virgo supercluster, which is also what the Milky Way is a part of. The cluster is a third closest to our local group, and only the Fornax cluster and the Virgo cluster lies closer. The Antlia cluster contains about 234 galaxies and is dominated by two massive spherical galaxies, NGC 3258 and NGC 3268. Antlia cluster is located 32 million light years from the Earth. And this is KF5, JHA, and this is Skynet. Slide master, slide number 26. There are a few more Astronomical League observing program objects in the constellation of Pyxis, the compass, and Antlia, the pump. I've given you just a sampling of some of those objects. The Astronomical League has, at last count, 96 different observing programs. Most of them have about 100 objects. Now, if you observe just 10 different objects in an observing program each month, then you can earn an observing certificate and a pen from the Astronomical League in about a year. And that is Miss Carolyn's Constellations of the Week, Pyxis, the compass, and Antlia, the pump. I want to thank my friends Dave Hutchinson and Dennis Harwell for the research and words on deep sky objects that I use and I borrow and steal from them for every Skynet. I also times use the website constellation-guide.com for information. Now next week we'll take a look at another two different constellations, Sextant, the Sextant, and Hydra, the water snake. And this is KF5JHA saying goodnight, and 73 back to our net control.
All right, thank you, Chaz. Appreciate that, and that might have been your worst joke ever. They were bad. Okay. Next we have Tom, KU5ICX with, Tom, if you want to go ahead and do the space launches and the visible satellite passages to finish up here this evening.
Thank you, Virginia. This is KE5ICX. Let's see, we have April 16th, the New Glenn Bluebird 7 launch. This will be from Launch Complex 36 at Cape Canaveral. The New Glenn rocket will launch AST Space Mobile's Bluebird 7 satellite into low Earth orbit. This is the second satellite in AST's Space Mobile Next Generation satellite constellation, and is designed to support space-based cellular broadband for commercial and government customers. Let's see, we have also in April the Vega C SMILE mission. This will be from ZLV pad in Europe's spaceport in Conroe, French Guiana. An Avio Vega rocket will launch the SMILE mission, a collaboration between the European Space Agency and Chinese Academy of Sciences. The SMILE, or Solar Wind Magnosphere Ionosphere Link Explorer, is set to deploy from the rocket 57 minutes after liftoff and deploys solar wings within 10 minutes after that. It is a planned mission life of 3 years and will operate in a highly elliptical Earth orbit. According to ESA, SMILE will use 4 science instruments to study how Earth responds to the solar wind from the sun. This will improve our understanding of solar storms, geomagnetic storms, and the science of space weather. Then we have in the fourth quarter of 2026 the Vulcan Centaur Dream Chaser 1 mission. We've been waiting for this for over a year. The Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida is where it will launch on its second demonstration flight with Sierra Space Dream Chaser cargo vehicle for the International Space Station. The Dream Chaser is a lifting body resupply spacecraft that launch on top of a rocket and land on a runway. This will be Dream Chaser's first flight to space. The Vulcan Centaur rocket will fly in the VC-4L configuration with 4 GEM 63XL solid rocket boosters, a long-length payload fairing, and 2 RL-10 rocket engines on the Centaur upper stage. Then finally, we have the Boeing Starliner 1 lifting off from SLC-41. This is on an Atlas V from Cape Canaveral. The rocket will launch Boeing CST-100 Starliner spacecraft to the International Space Station. Originally planned as a first post-certification flight with a 4-person crew, this will instead be an uncrewed cargo flight to test changes in the vehicle made in the aftermath of the crewed flight test that launched in 2024. A very exciting one. This is actually in July. Well, it says 2028, so I think I'm surprised it's here, but it's a significant mission. This will be from Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy. A Falcon Heavy rocket will launch NASA's Dragonfly mission, which consists of a rotor craft designed by the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, APL, which will explore Saturn's icy moon Titan. The mission was originally slated for 2019 and went through multiple planned iterations across fiscal years 2020 through 22. It passed its preliminary design review in March of 2023 and its critical design review in April of 2025. The mission has a total life cycle cost of $3.35 billion, with $256 million, which was awarded to SpaceX to provide the launch services and other mission-related costs. The 20-day launch schedule opens on July 5th, 2028. Has interesting inclusion from the website. Okay, well, just take it for what it is. Okay, we have coming up visible satellite passes for the International Space Station. We have 3 of them. Well, actually, there's more than that. April 14th, we have a -1.4 magnitude out of the south. It'll reach its highest point at 20 degrees at 6 6:07. It'll fall to the east at 6:10. April 16th has a really great pass. This one's at minus 3.7 magnitude at 6:06 a.m. out of the southwest, reaching highest point at 78 degrees at 6:09, and it'll fall to the northeast at 6:12. Next, April 17th, again in the morning, minus 2.7 magnitude, 5:21 in the morning out of the south-southeast, reaches highest point at 38 degrees at 5:22, and it'll fall to the east-northeast at 5:25. And then finally, April 18th actually has two passes, one right after another, 90 minutes later. 4:36 in the morning, it'll reach its highest point at 16 degrees at 4:36:18. It'll fall to the east at 4:37. Then the next pass is a little better, minus 2.5 magnitude at 6:09 a.m. It'll reach its highest point at 29 degrees at 6:11, and it'll fall to the north-northeast at 6:14. So some really good passes for the International Space Station. Tiangong is next. That's the Chinese space station. We have a couple of good ones. April 10th, minus 2.0 magnitude at 21:20 in the evening out of the northwest. Reached its highest point at 59 degrees at 21:23. It'll fall to the northeast at 21:24. April 11th, minus 1.1 magnitude, also in the evening, 2020. Out of the northwest again, pretty much plots the same path. 2023. It'll reach at 34 degrees and it'll fall to the east at 2025. Then finally, April 12th, minus 2.1 magnitude at 2055 out of the west-northwest, reaches highest point at 73 degrees at 2059, and it'll fall to the southeast at 2100. So there are your passes for the International Space Station and Tiangong. Some really good ones coming up this week and a little beyond that. Back to you, Virginia. This is KE5 ICX.
Okay, thank you, Tom. That's a lot of good stuff. All right, we're just about time on the net, so I will take any additional check-ins from any mode for anyone who would like to get on the check-in list for Skynet this evening. Please from now, call sign, name, and location.
This is November 8th, Whiskey Romeo, N8WWR, Romeo. I'm in Grapevine on a talkie. Thanks for running that for you.
Kilo 5, Juliet Delta Whiskey with a question.
A5JDW.
Oh, thank you, Virginia. I had a space question actually I was going to ask earlier, but I couldn't get to the radio in time. Hey, we're always talking about binary or companion stars. Are there any tertiary stars out there? Are there places where they've observed three stars, in any configuration orbiting each other? K5JW.
Oh, that's a good question. I believe that is true. In fact, the star system, one of the star systems that is featured in the book Project Hail Mary is the Turner star system. But Chaz would be the best person to ask that question to. So Chaz, do you have any more information on that? ND5F.
That's a great question, John. Actually, our star, the sun, is a lone star. It's different. Most stars are part of multiple star systems, 2, 3, 4, or more stars. Right overhead, we've got a couple of bright stars in the constellation of Gemini. One's Castor, one's Pollux. Castor is actually a 6-star system. If you look through a telescope at it, you can see it as a couple of stars, maybe even see it as 4 stars, but it's actually a 6-star system. So most stars are part of multiple star systems. John, did that answer your question?
Oh, maybe. I thought some of those were considered clusters, but I never thought about that. I'll have to look it up. Thank you. K5JW.
Okay, thank you for such a cool question. So thank you, Chaz, for your answer. And that is a good reminder that the sun, as average as it might seem, is actually unique in that way. All right, well, let's see. We have got a nice group of hams that participated this evening. Let me do a little bit of mental gymnastics here to get a final total. If I can get the spreadsheet up. And that would be...
I'm completely operational, and all my circuits are functioning perfectly.
Afterglow movie net. Checked in on Echolink, and online, and also on the air. So that's really excellent. We've had a wonderful evening here on Skynet. We hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for net control stations for this and all the DARC nets. If you would like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending email to net@w5fc.org. You can follow topics and discussions about this net and astronomy in general on Facebook and X, as well as our audio and video streams, video archives, and other useful internet resources by going to w5fc.org at the conclusion of this net. Until next Saturday night, this is NG5S. My name is Virginia, and I will be closing this net at 10:31 local time and returning the repeater to normal amateur use for a very short time before we start the Afterglow movie net. 73, everybody, and enjoy the evening discovering the universe. This is NG5S net concluded.
Late check in Virginia at AWWR. I don't know if you heard me there talking. AWWR, Roman Great Plain. Thanks for running the net. It doesn't matter if you actually put it in or not. I appreciate you.
Yes, Romy, I did get you, and I apologize. I got wrapped up in the question that we got, and I did not acknowledge you. So yes, you are on the list, and thank you so much for checking in. Thank you.
I appreciate you, ma'am. I know it's menial, but thank you so much. Everyone have a good night. NAWR.
And we'll be starting the Afterglow movie net for the movie The Stranger from 1973 in about 5 minutes. That's enough time to go make your microwave popcorn. Set it 4 minutes, no more than that. 1 minute to get it in a bowl and back to the radio. We'll be talking about that movie in 5 minutes. This is KE5, ICX.
Hey, Tom, quick question. Actually, I didn't hear the count either, but Kelly, I haven't heard her in a while. Is she out and about, or has she moved to another zip code? K5, JDW.
Well, John, she has moved to a different address. Yeah, she's, I think, still within sort of the Dallas area, although she's on the fringe. I believe she is now retired. She's been doing a lot of travel. I've seen her on Facebook. That's about it. She continues to be active with the Texas Astronomical Society, but I haven't seen her. But of course, I'm out of town myself, so I don't know. But she's around. She just hasn't been on radio as much. KE5, ICX.
Okay, I was curious if she was still where she was. I haven't heard her in a while now. Is she still affiliated with JPL?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't talked to her in quite a while. I do know she's still active and doing things in astronomy, but I haven't. And then lots of travel. She's doing a lot of travel, so maybe that's what she's spending her time with. She may be retired now. It's possible. KE5, ICX.
That's true. She was hanging around some rocket launch places or some planetariums in southwest Texas, I think, a while back. Anyway, that's what email's for. Thank you, Tom. I'll leave you a few seconds to yourself here before you come back. K5 JDW.
No problem. KE5, I6. Okay, it's time to come back to the radio. Bring your popcorn. Make sure it's in a nice container. Don't burn yourself. Tonight's movie is The Stranger from 1973. It was from a television pilot starring Glenn Corbett. Yes, he's the guy who played Zephyrin Cochrane in the television series Star Trek. Also had Cameron Mitchell in it. Actually, it had a lot of people that were veteran actors in a lot of stuff. Surprisingly, a lot of good talent in this film, but wasn't all that good. It was an independent film production distribution company, Film Ventures, reissued Stranger in syndication under the Stranded in Space. I found out that MS3K also had a version of this, which probably would have been more entertaining. The opening credits for Stranded in Space featured footage from an entirely unrelated film, in this case the 1983 low-budget science fiction film Prisoners of the Lost Universe, which probably was more entertaining. see here what I can tell you about. The project was produced by Bing Crosby Productions, who did a lot of TV stuff, including Hogan's Heroes, probably what they're best known for. At the time, the idea of an astronaut landing on a twin planet orbiting the sun exactly opposite Earth was used in the film Doppelganger, also known, and as I remember it, Journey to the Far Side of the Sun, which was produced 4 years earlier in 1969. Chrysler Corporation is listed in the credits at the end of the film for providing automobiles. A Chevy van was used towards the beginning of the film, and a bow tie on the grill was accordingly disguised. Not very well. It still looked like the bow tie. Benita Cook drives a 1972 Plymouth Fury 3 four-door hardtop, and Dylan drives a 1972 Dodge Dart Demon. Oh boy. Oh, and here it is, the MST3K appearance in 1991, presented by Film Ventures International iteration as part of an episode of a movie-mocking television series, Mystery Science Theater 3000. I could read this very long plot. I don't know why the boring movies have such really long plot descriptions that they do, I guess. But at any rate, I'm not going to read this. We'll see what happens. We'll see how many people check in on this daily. But no critical reviews. Did have Tim O'Connor in it. You may remember him as the Doctor in the second season of Flash Gordon, the television series. Let me see who else. Maybe I can tell you in here. Cameron Mitchell, of course, he always plays kind of the heavy. I think I got that right. And so, yeah. Cameron Mitchell, you recognize him. You may not know him by name, but you would recognize his face. He was the bad guy in all of this. Lou Ayres was in it as well. He was one of the scientists. He was also in Planet of the Apes, the first movie. So you probably didn't recognize him because, yeah, he was one of the apes. Okay, with that, we will continue with the net. What we'll do is we'll take check-ins. You let me know your call sign, your name. Did you see this film? You don't have to have actually seen the film to participate this evening, because you can talk about anything you want. That's the best part about it. If you haven't seen the film, we always welcome folks. We will ask you, would you dare watch this film after our reviews, so you will get a question to that effect. We'll go through 3 rounds. First round will be talking about the plot. Second round is talking about the characterization and acting. And the third round is anything you want. Usually it's the special effects, music, lighting, sound, and lack of budget typically, but who knows on this one. I think it did have a little bit of a budget. And anything you may not have said in the first couple of rounds. So there you have it. We'll go ahead and get started. Please come with your call sign, your name. Did you see tonight's movie, The Stranger from 1973?
No one ever wants to go first. Okay. November Tango 5, Tango Mike. Tony in Dallas. Yes, I saw the movie.
No one ever wants to go second either. W5BLT, Whiskey 5, Bacon, Lettuce, Tomato, Bill, Garland. Yes, I saw this fine film.
I went second last week. This is November Victor 5 Foxtrot, Virginia, in Fort Worth. Yes, I saw the movie.
All right, during the awkward silence, I'll go ahead and check those who have braved to stand up and say, I am Spartacus. Spartacus number 1, NT5TM, Tony Dallas. Yes, you saw the film. W5BLT, Bill Garland. Yes, he saw the film. NV5F, Virginia, Fort Worth, number 2 last week, but number 3 this week. Yes, she saw the film. Additional check-ins, please come now. Don't worry about it. They'll check in. There'll be others, I'm pretty sure. Well, we'll go ahead and get started, and then we'll see if we can get some other folks to step up to the plate and take the big swing. Starting with Tony, NT5TM. Tony, you're number 1. You get to say whatever you want about the plot to this fine film. So please, go ahead from KE5ICX.
You know, that's an awfully broad mandate. I could say, for example, that too many aardvarks featured in the plot, but that would make no sense, so I retract that. I do not say it. Instead, I will say that I was initially drawn in. Now, the premise of this is every bit as bad as the premise of Snowpiercer, just as I can't believe that, all those railroad tracks and bridges and culverts and things would stay intact for 18 years without constant maintenance. The idea of an alternate Earth on the other side of the sun just doesn't work. It would be this incredible mathematical implausibility that its orbit had the exact opposite inclination of ours, so we would never have seen it as a brilliant, bright blue planet during a solar eclipse. I don't believe it at all. I don't think it's possible. The math doesn't math either, because we would have noticed its effects on things like space probes and the orbits of other planets. It's just impossible. Aside from that, you gotta swallow something here to watch a movie. You gotta put up with something for a minute. So I do think that the first few minutes of this movie kept me really interested. I really sincerely thought that our hero had caught out them and proved they were Russians, because they didn't know who Paul Revere was. They thought he might have played in the baseball team. I mean, these people know nothing about Earth. They must be Russians. But unfortunately, it seemed to keep getting slower and slower. The betrayal by the brainwashed young woman was the most foreshadowed thing we've had to put up with in weeks. Oh, just like the girl who betrayed me. Oh, I love him, I love him. I keep repeating my same lines. In fact, repetition was a constant part of the plot of this movie with the propaganda broadcasts. The description of astronaut Stryker over and over and over. I'm pretty sure that in a real society, people would start tuning that stuff out because it was repeated so much. But I guess that's more for round 2. So once I accepted a premise that was every bit as bad as Snowpiercer, sadly I have to say that, Snowpiercer kept me watching. I thought, where did all these people with axes come from? But I kept watching because it was exciting. This was not. It just seemed to slow down and make me want to sleep, which is not how an action movie is supposed to go. So, great beginning, ridiculous premise, which is not rare, but it just seemed to drag too much. I think the plot was a little, just average and boring. NT5TM.
Hey, thank you, Tony. Thanks for those comments. Gave me a couple of ideas for my section. Next up is Bill, W5BLT. Bill saw this fine film. Tell us about this fine film and how it all worked out in your fine mind from KE5ICX.
Well, you made some assumptions here that my mind was fine. I'm not sure if that's quite right. And I don't think this movie was quite right either. It had me going because I didn't read anything before I watched it. And so, obviously missing some of the visuals, I was sucked in thinking that he was on a alternate planet. And yes, I know you have to suspend reality. The ending was just kind of ruined the whole thing for me. I was liking it for a while, and then it was becoming kind of predictable. The little morning radio news program kind of reminded me of the sort of the Radio Moscow stuff that I would listen to on shortwave, but also The Prisoner, when they would do the good morning everyone and give you information about the village. So I don't know if they took that. Some of the stuff kind of reminded me, there's some allusions to 1984. But then, I don't know if I want to give the ending away, but when you have kind of a movie that's sort of so-so, not so good, not so bad, and then you get a horrible ending, then it just kind of leaves you going, man, I just spent an hour and 40 minutes watching this. The only good thing, though, I can say is it brought back great memories of when I was a little kid, and I would look forward to these movies on the TV. We only had like 3 major networks and a public TV and an independent channel. So with 5 channels to watch, you sort of flipped around and found something that you thought you could tolerate, and it kind of reminds me of our elections, So anyway, I don't know. It wasn't the worst thing we've seen, but I don't think it's been the best either. W5DLT.
All right, very good. Thank you, Bill. And you mentioned The Prisoner. I have a comment about that series, too, in just a minute when we finish with everyone else. Next up, Virginia ND5F. What did you think about the plot from KE5ICX?
Okay, well, I don't know why Bill would worry about giving the end of this away since we've all seen it. I guess in case there's some person out there who hasn't, we don't want to spoil it for them. Okay, well, in that same vein, I was saying last night that when this was starting, and it was so obviously a cheap made-for-TV movie thing, that I kind of missed the cheap made-for-TV movies. We don't get those anymore. Now everything's big budget, overblown, over everything. I don't even watch TV anymore. I don't even know what shows are on. I miss that too. I miss when we had 3 networks and a public television and maybe a UHF channel or 2, and everybody kind of watched what was on, and it was amazing how you could get interested in almost anything because it was, there were so few choices. Even when we started to have cable when I was a kid, you still had your basic TV channels, and then you had maybe a couple of movie channels. And you really had to just be willing to engage with whatever came along. And I think we were a lot more open-minded to things that weren't so great. And a cheap, low-budget TV movie was fine. That having been said, I didn't see this when I was younger. It did air in '73. I was too young to remember this airing. I don't know. I don't think that I ever saw it anywhere else. I might have seen the MST3K version of it years ago. I probably did. Anyway, yeah, the plot was at least kind of interesting when it started. It was sort of like the opposite of Planet of the Apes, you know, where he thinks he's on Earth, but he's not, whereas they, you know, thought they were on some weird planet, but they were actually on Earth in the future. Anyway, so it, you know, it was pretty standard stuff, but in the day, back in the day, it probably was a little bit more exciting and interesting, you know, that idea of, oh, I think I'm on Earth, but I find out I'm on some kind of Earth analog planet where everything is somehow exactly like Earth, almost like like the fact that it's an opposite Earth or mirror Earth, just because, like, somehow because it's exactly on the opposite side of the sun, that almost makes it some like alternate dimension version of Earth, which doesn't make a lot of sense either. It makes even less sense than all the stuff Tony was talking about, like how the orbital mechanics would just not work. So anyway, yeah, that it didn't take very long to figure out that he was on something other than Earth, even though it looked exactly like Earth, and they drove a bunch of Chrysler cars and spoke the same language and had, you know, a very similar culture. Obviously, this was an allegory for communism, and that was definitely a thing in the middle of the Cold War stuff. And the radio broadcast thing is such a trope now for any kind of communist thing, where you've got the morning radio broadcast, or the loudspeakers with the morning, you know, or constant announcements about that, you know, just brainwashing and propaganda. But I did have a friend in the Czech Republic back in the 90s, and that was only a few years after the Czech Republic was formed, and he did tell me what it was like living in Soviet-controlled Czechoslovakia, and they actually do run, like Bill said, the Radio Moscow type stuff. They actually did have that kind of stuff on the morning radio. It would be all these propaganda things, and then there'd be the morning exercise program where you stretch and do all the stuff they tell you to do, you know. It just sounds so, you know, like cliche, but apparently it was real. So that's what that made me think of. And I'm not sure why a mirror Earth would have, like, communist, you know, Soviet bloc style radio broadcast, complete with communist-sounding intro music. But, yeah, it was a pretty, I guess, predictable plot. You know, I guess knowing it was a TV pilot made it easy to predict that he wasn't going to get away, but he did kind of have the sort of escape thing, and it did set up an interesting idea, and I think if I had seen this when I was a kid, I probably would have liked it and, you know, been interested in how does he, you know, let's watch another episode or another one and see, you know, what his adventures are as he tries to get back to Earth. So, it is definitely not the worst thing we've ever seen. A little predictable, a little obvious nowadays, but, you know, 50 years ago when this first aired, you know, it might have been kind of exciting and interesting and topical. So, you know, I think it was okay. Not hard to figure out what was going to happen. Implausible in the science fiction sense of this being like, you know, an unequal and opposite, I guess, mirror image planet to Earth, or a mirror image of, you know, American society or whatever. But, yeah, you had your standard love interest, and you had the good guy who wanted to help him out, and, you know, who was also kind of, you know, on the wrong side of the law, and had been condemned to death because of that. that was kind of a little twist there. And honestly, I was actually doing something while I was watching this, so I kind of missed Tom's reading of the synopsis because sometimes I use that to cheat on the movies that I haven't really paid a whole lot of attention to. So I was kind of half paying attention to this. It didn't seem that was hard to figure out what was going on. But it's something I might check out again, except the quality of this particular version of it was so poor visually and sound-wise, but that's kind of a round 3 thing anyway. But yeah, it was okay. It kept me kind of interested, and even though it was pretty predictable, and but hey, if there were more episodes, maybe I would watch them. Back to net NV5.
Okay, thank you, Virginia. And yeah, I didn't read the synopsis because it was kind of long, and as we already kind of suffered through rather slow plotting thing, it just is a he said, she said that was really kind of boring when you really got down to it. So I always debate whether I want to read the thing or not. It kind of depends. Okay. Let me see. I'll take additional check-ins. Anyone else out there want to join us? We're talking about tonight's movie, The Stranger from 1973, about a counter-Earth, one on the opposite side of our Earth. And how come neither side was smart enough to know about the other? At any rate, if you'd like to join us, please come with your call sign, name, and you see this fine film.
Kilo Bravo 9, 0 Oscar Kilo, Sean in Fort Worth. Yes, I did see this.
Okay, we pulled one more. Let me look up on Echolink. I think the usual suspects are already there. Mostly, we'll see. So I got KB9SOK. Sean in Fort Worth, yes, he saw the film. Anyone else? Okay, well, Sean, you're up. What'd you think of the plot?
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. Well, this was one actually I was curious to see. A while back, I'd done some deep diving into the internet, which is always scary, and I was looking at, different science fiction films. I was looking for something to recommend to the group, and I was watching several videos on, underappreciated science fiction films, and this one came up on several lists. So I was kind of expecting better than what we got, because it seems like there were several people that really appreciated this film. So this was one that was, I was kind of on the lookout for, so I was kind of excited to see it, but unfortunately I agree with the group. I was let down with this one. The plot, pretty ridiculous, being 180 degrees or, the opposite side of the sun. And then, over 4 billion years of time, both planets developed at the perfect exact same speed. Yeah, I don't buy that. But what I will say is, we say this very, very, very often on here, why don't they explain why this happened? Had they just come into the film and said, he just got plucked out of the space and was on a planet that was similar to Earth, we would have looked, well, how did he, where is this planet? We would have asked that question. And at least they did attempt to answer that. This film did attempt to explain its science, even though it's not good science. They did try. So I will give them a little bit of credit for that. Unfortunately, not much. I thought the premise was interesting. Normally we see films where the aliens get stuck on Earth. Well, we got stuck on somewhere else. So, the idea wasn't horrible. But unfortunately, I got to agree with Tony. The thing at first was, it had my attention, but then it slowly lost me. It got more boring, a lot of repetitiveness of the same thing, and just kind of lost me. And then, as I believe Virginia mentioned, you knew how it was going to end. You knew the guy wasn't going to get away because this was a pilot. And if he got away, then there'd be no show to create if people liked it. So that would have. So we had a movie that really didn't have an ending. So it's kind of disappointing. That you watch for an hour and a half and you don't really get a very good conclusion. So overall, yeah, pretty disappointing. It's unfortunate. But I will say, as it's kind of already been mentioned, back in the old days, yes, we had, I think back in the early days of television, they were quite more, networks were really brave to try new ideas and throw it, see the sticks to the wall. We had some pretty ridiculous shows that came out and became very popular. Shows that, I know when I was growing up watching, things, like The Fall Guy or Knight Rider or, any shows like that, of course, Star Trek's not really out there. But we had Babylon 5, there was just, networks weren't as scared to try things, I think, back then. Today, it's all very formulated. It's all either 27 different versions of NCIS, or 30 different versions of another version of ER, or, PD this, PD that, PD this. I'm surprised we've not had a Dallas one yet. TV today, quite honestly, is boring. They won't try nothing because they're scared to death. Back then they were willing to, let's give this a try, see if people like it. And I actually agree with Virginia on it. Had I been a kid and seen this, I probably would have been interested because I wouldn't have understood the science, or I may not even cared. Other kind of sci-fi stuff. Another show that I enjoyed when I was young, which, my parents absolutely hated, was The A-Team. Once again, it didn't make any sense, but I enjoyed it. But as you get older and watch shows like that, you might roll your eyes up going, okay, whatever. But so, yeah, I think the show was actually intended for a younger audience, or at least I think so anyway. So that could be the difference there. But, so yeah, I agree, it wasn't horrible, but it was just kind of boring, and unfortunately with the unsatisfactory ending, it just kind of leaves you with, so, yeah, overall disappointed, so I'll just leave it at that. Back to that, KB9S, okay.
All right, thank you, Sean. Thanks for those comments. I have a tendency to agree with you. I agree with Tony at first. This thing seemed intriguing because our astronauts seemed to be, returned home. We didn't know what happened to the other two astronauts at first, and then we're finally told. But the people that interrogate him or talk to him seem like they're friendly, and then we find out they're not, and they're holding him against his wishes and all of that. That all worked very well. We didn't know what would happen, but it sort of, rather than leaving things to be questioned and maybe revealed over the series, which could have been really interesting, and I don't know, when you do a made-for-TV movie as sort of a pilot to see if it sells or not, I guess you've got to tell the story and move it along a little bit for people to even be remotely interested. But, a pilot can just be a pilot and just reveal little bits of information. The Prisoner was like that, which is a wonderful television series. That was mentioned here a minute ago, and I love The Prisoner, and I still enjoy watching it. They did a remake of it, and it was okay. I still think the original was better. There was another series along the way. And The Prisoner, even to the very end, it never really revealed a lot about what was going on, who the good guys were, who the bad guys were. You were just kind of left in the dark. and to find that you never ever get out of that environment. You never know who these people are or what they do, and you're always under surveillance, and that became very pertinent in that storyline, and that's how it ends, basically the way it began. So there's that. There was another series, an Australian series that never aired here in the U.S., but or was it New Zealand? I think it was a New Zealand series. It was called This Is Not My Life, and it's about a guy who wakes up and he's at another place, similar to The Prisoner, but there are people he knows, sort of, and they say they had a nervous breakdown, but in reality, we don't know. He has some backstory and back life, and they keep him under surveillance through the whole thing. And it looks like the future, at least a few years in the future, with clear displays and special observing capabilities and all that. And it was nicely done. And one character actually was replaced by another person, completely different person, but referred to in the story as that same person, even though they disappeared because they started confiding with that individual, the star of the show. And we were starting to get information, and suddenly that person was replaced. Very intriguing, very interesting, kept you interested in the show. Another show that actually did that as well, which was rather interesting in the first season, of all things, was Land of the Giants by Irwin Allen. This one is, the story where the people are small, and the giants are there, Land of the Giants. But it's a totalitarian society, at least in the first season. The second season, they dropped that premise completely. So there was a little bit of that, and trying to understand what society was like and what to expect. And the guest actors that were in that would find the people were under an oppressive government and had their own problems and were hiding things along the way. So your guest star or stars actually had a dilemma they had to deal with in the story, as well as the little people. That bugged me that they couldn't expand. What they did was they went to the old shootouts and car chases and all of that, and golly, this is no fun. Oh, and don't forget too, I'd forgotten, The Invaders was another series. That was a great series. It only ran two seasons, where everybody's getting replaced by the aliens and it's becoming more and more authoritarian. That was quite interesting, and anybody who was in any sort of position of power, from the police department to government officials, could be the aliens, and you didn't know, because the poor guy that had experienced the aliens and their invasion plan and all of that was constantly being stalked, so they would replace with doppelgangers. And it was really kind of cool. That was a pretty good show, and it worked very well with the Red Menace back then as well. So there were shows that had already set the precedent before this thing ever came out, and they could have done any of these shows or knockoffs of these shows. They certainly knew about them, but in the end, they never really took it beyond that. Oh well, who knows? There's somebody over on YouTube saying, is talking about, sounds like something out of Mystery Science Theater. And when I was a kid, we watched Quantum Leap, Knight Rider, and Fish and Ships in the 90s. So, Witness Protection 4233, we see you out there. You're listening. If you got any comments, go ahead and type them in. The thing that, and my final comment here, and it probably went a little long, is, and I've mentioned this before on this net, but J.J. Abrams, who's done all of these different series, the mystery series like Lost and the reboots of Star Trek and that, one of the things that he did for a lecture is he brought a box in that he had gotten from, as a child, that he had ordered away, a magic box that contained magic tricks and things. He never opened it. And the box looked like it had been around a long time. He says, why should I open open the box of mystery stuff because it's no longer a mystery. The dream was, what's in the box? What could be in the box? And it was the imagination about what's in the box. And he said if he opened the box, this would go away. There would be no imagination, which is why he did the series Lost the way he did. He didn't reveal everything, and as such, kept people intrigued. This series could have probably been something like that, probably the wrong period of time. But it could have kept us in the dark about what was going on rather than giving us this improbable alternate counter Earth on the other side of the planet, which we know could easily be figured out, especially with this group that had an advanced space program. They probably already knew about the other Earth, or should have at least. So I don't know. Anyway, that's my long dissertation. Let's see. Well, let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and ask if anybody else is out there would like to check in. We're kind of talking about the Stranger from 1973, but if you want to talk about one of these spy versus spy things that we're talking about, we can. Anyone else want to check in? Please come now. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get back up to the top. The next round is talking about the characterization and acting. We had a lot of people in this pilot. I was surprised the number of people in this show that did in some cases cameos. So if you, we'll go ahead and start with Tony, NT5TM. Tony, what did you think about the acting and characterization?
Possibly more interesting than the plot. I think I can't remember. I think, Tom, you hinted this in the Facebook chat, that these people were all just utility actors with huge, long resumes, and I started playing around with Wikipedia during the more boring moments of the movie, and yeah, they'd all done hundreds of things, most of which I'd never heard of, but they sure did work a lot. They were competent. I could tell all the characters apart. I even remembered some of their names. They had appropriate voices. I laugh at certain cliches of characterization. Any character can change into any other character's clothes, and they always fit perfectly. Even the shoes are the right size. So, everyone seemed competent. Everyone seemed adequate. They were well differentiated. I found the sexism to be kind of annoying. It's my house, and you've never been here before, but why don't you go in there and cook for us? And Bettina seems to have been a deeply annoying character to me because I'm trying to think about some redeeming feature for her, and I can't find it. Nope, she was just totally annoying. And as I think I mentioned in the first run, yes, her betrayal of the protagonist was over-foreshadowed. But still, everyone was competent, and Tom, I really enjoyed your closing comments from last round. I may even have to go to Broadcastify and play that back, because I remember some of the shows you mentioned. You really did make me want to rewatch The Prisoner, but I couldn't remember everything you said. So, I was not taking notes either, unfortunately. I usually don't on this net. Maybe I need to start. But yeah, competent, not too interesting, didn't actually care that much. And unfortunately, just like with the interest in the plot, my caring got less as the movie went on, and I started getting more and more annoyed with certain characters. But hey, they were effective and competent, and yeah, they'd all been in zillions of things, so they were all very good workers. NT5TM.
All right, thank you, Tony. Yeah, the series, This Is Not My Life, is a New Zealand series. I'm not sure it's available anywhere. You might want to check YouTube. That's a really good show. I have to go back and rewatch. It's been a while. What's the other one I mentioned? Lost, of course. And Land of the Giants' first season was not bad. It was not my favorite series, but it was okay. The Invaders was a great show. I love that show quite a bit. That was actually, of all the bunch where you have you can't trust the state, that was probably the best one. That one ran 2 seasons, The Invader. That was a Quinn Martin production. Okay, next up is Bill, W5DLT. Bill, what did you think about the acting and characterization?
Well, one thing that I would say is I also like the time tunnel, although that has nothing to do with totalitarianism, although some of the episodes they had in there had some totalitarian people, but I always like the time tunnel because I love history. But, yeah, I like Neil in the show. I guess since we've kind of revealed the ending, I'll just go ahead and say when I was reading about this movie, at the end Neil is discovering that he's actually a prisoner there, and I guess they're controlling his reality or something. So did Patina really betray him, or was she one of the aliens, I guess, and it's all just made up stuff? I don't know. And that I was just kind of reading about this, and I think what their intent was is to have a mini-series or maybe a couple seasons, but I just don't know how that's why I had to look up the ending, because I couldn't tell from just listening to it what was happening. So that's what I was getting online. You guys could probably fill me in better. The characters were predictable. I did like the one guy that was helping them out. I think that had the heart problem or something, that said he was going to die in a year. And he was telling Neil that this made him feel young again. I can't remember his name, though. But anyway, yeah, I mean, you didn't really get a sense on here that, like, you were tied to any of these characters. But I think back in the 70s and even in the 80s, we just all kind of sat around the TV and chatted and watched it, and the TV was sort of on for background. And so maybe you'd kind of tune in on this and then go off and do something, come back to it 20 minutes later. Different world back then. And I have noticed, though, that with my parents, they kind of will have the TV on all the time. And my generation, maybe we're glued to our phones, but the TV's not always on in the background. And so maybe we're kind of spoiled and everything has to be this big production and get your attention. But, back then, I don't know that it was that case. Things just ran on TV and you kind of tuned in and out and maybe come back inside and, again, do something for 20 or 30 minutes and then finish the show. Of course, then when we had VCRs, then we could record it, and you go back and really criticize things and look at each scene and character and do a more in-depth plot analysis. But back then, it just ran, and you didn't get to watch it until it aired again sometime 2 years later. So, yeah, I know I rambled on about other stuff, but really can't go on about the characters because there wasn't really much I could hang my hat on. Back to you, Tom, W5DLT.
Yes, Virginia, your thought on characterization and acting?
Okay, well, first I'll start by saying there has never been any kind of imperative here about not spoiling the ending. We usually we usually have a synopsis that encompasses the whole movie, and the ending is fair game. I think that might even be part of our overripe entertainment critical society out there. We're all online blathering about every detail of every show, but then everybody's mortified of spoilers or being the person who spoiled something. And that's one great thing about Afterglow. We've all seen it, and even the people who haven't seen it, they probably don't even know what the movie was. And hey, the ending is definitely up for grabs. It's definitely part of helping us talk about the movie too. A lot of what I want to say about a movie is whether or not I was satisfied by the ending. And let's see, acting and characters. Yeah, everything here was a pretty kind of a stock archetype character. For each character, you kind of knew where they were headed in either this movie or in the plot of the possible series that could have resulted from this. Yeah, I didn't feel very attached to anybody. I cared about the protagonist. I wanted him to get away and survive, and I wanted the people who were helping him to also be rewarded for their kindness. And it kind of was a little obvious early on what some of their roles were going to be. But the actors, like Tony said, they were just good old regular actors that worked steady and have worked steady since. And I always say slow and steady wins the race. And they did their job. And it would be interesting to find what they've been in recently and see how much better they are at what they do, or if they're maybe the same and they've always just kind of worked in the background and kind of helped keep things going. But yeah, they were fine. The lady was a little annoying and like how much she loved him, but how you kind of knew she was gonna be brainwashed into betraying him at the end. And I didn't feel attached to any of the characters, but I cared about the actors did a fine enough job that it wasn't like I just totally didn't care about anybody in this. Like I said, I was kind of multitasking while I watched it, and could have stood to pay a little better attention. But yeah, just a lot of people and all the moving parts of all the standard, plot devices and characters in a show of this nature. So yeah, it's like we've been saying, if this were on, if I'd seen this when I was a kid, I probably would have gotten interested in it. I think we actually, even though the TV was on all the time, I think people actually did stop and watch. I don't think we were like, trying to be productive all the time where we, couldn't just, I have a hard time now sitting down and watching something without feeling like I need to be doing something else at the same time, kind of like last night. And I don't, I'm single, so I don't have people to sort of distract me from entertainment or just tasks that I'm assigned myself to, or to just to kind of keep moving in a direction I want to be moving with my life. I think I might be more inclined to sit down and watch something from beginning to end without paying attention to something else if I had people to sit and watch it with. So I do miss that, and I miss that even a show like this one, that was standard TV back then, Now everything is just risk aversion, and it's just boring as dishwater. So there's not a whole lot I want to sit down and pay attention to. I usually watch movies when I do watch something, or I watch like entertainment, like alt media entertainment commentary stuff on YouTube, and some of which I will comment about in round 3. I've got a couple things to call back then. But anyway, I'll go back to net NV5F.
All right, thank you, Virginia. Yeah, that's pretty much the experience. We only had like 4 channels back then, ABC, NBC, CBS, and then when channel UHF came into being, I had my first TV that I had, I was given the hand-me-down, which was pretty cool because it's unusual for a kid to have his own TV, but mine was just VHF. Didn't have the UHF, so I could only watch 3 channels. Well, actually 4 because we had Canadian Channel 9 too, so 4 channels. Okay, next up, Sean, TV9SOK. Sean, your thoughts on characterization and acting?
Yeah, this is TV9SOK. Well, I don't really have a lot to add. I agree with everybody that these characters were pretty standard, pretty predictable. I think the actors did an adequate job. Obviously, these are, well-worked actors that had done a lot. I agree. I did find the woman a little annoying at times. It was kind of weird that she fell in love with him within literally a half a day of being with him, and she couldn't stand to be away from him, but then she still betrays him, One thing with these characters kind of odd as a choice was, part of the writing, kind of almost going back to plot, was, they obviously, they killed off the scientist. They essentially pretty much brain damaged the girl. So for a show that they wanted to turn into a series, you just wiped out the guy's allies. So it's like, where were they going to go if this got picked up? He would have needed an inside person who's ever going to have any chance of getting his hands on a spaceship. So, it was kind of weird that they kind of missed the direction they went with it. But, yeah, these characters, our protagonist, at the beginning I did, obviously I did care about him. I really wanted to see what was going on. But as time went on, as the story kind of got boring, I did lose the interest even in him. And, too, you knew he wasn't going to make it out. So, yeah, it was just, there wasn't a lot of depth in this. Of course, once again, if this was really meant to be a TV series, then I would assume they would have fleshed out the characters, during that first season, like you do with any TV show. You would have learned a great deal about them. I know at this point they needed it to be somewhat action-oriented to try to get people to really tune in and watch and get the ratings, so that way they could make the show. But even though there wasn't really that much action, other than the car chase scene was really it, is all we had. And boy, did they love to use helicopters back then for chase scenes. They did that and everything. Anyway, yeah, I don't have a lot to say about characters. I mean, they're pretty routine characters, nothing real special. So anyway, back to that, KB9SOK.
All right, thanks, Sean. And now we're at the bottom of the list. I'll go ahead and ask. Anyone else wants to join us? Please come with your call sign name. Did you see tonight's movie, The Stranger from 1973? Okay, hearing none, I really didn't expect anyone to, but we've got a list. According to Wikipedia, we got a whole bunch of people in this thing. Glenn Corbett, I never thought he was a very good actor myself. He always sounded kind of monotone, but apparently people liked him, and they kept putting him in premier roles in films. This one, he seemed less rigid than he was in, say, the Star Trek episode. I remember him then. There was a throwaway character in here that died in the first 5 minutes. Arch Whitting, who played Mike, the astronaut. I didn't recognize him because of the longer hair, but he played Sparks on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. In other words, he was the radio operator, you know, the radio operator who could never ever get a signal out or receive a signal except something that would cause all the panels to explode. Yeah, he spent a lot of time there. So he's one of us. Unfortunately, he wasn't very good at what he did. But at any rate, that was Arch Whiting. Tim O'Connor is Dr. Revere. I thought that he was a pretty good character. I liked him in this until they sent him to the loony bin and he didn't get to say anything. He was very popular, was in a lot of stuff through the years, and very popular as an actor. Cameron Mitchell, Benedict. I thought Benedict was a really good character. Typical evil type of thing, you know, kind of the twirling mustache type, but perfectly adequate for the role that he had. Our Sharon Aker, I guess she was okay, kind of whiny though, through the whole thing as was mentioned. The one guy in here that was, I looked at, I kept racking my brain. Steve Franken is listed. Henry Maitland, I made a lot of fun of him in the movie last night. But he actually started his own television show. It only lasted a few episodes, I think. Oh, you know what? This is the one that didn't even... it also was a pilot, so he played a lead in some Hawaiian thing. But we remember him in Westworld. He gets wiped out. He was kind of a prominent character. I swear he was in more stuff than what they listed for him. But he was in that. Let's see who else. I think that was pretty much it. Oh, the guy who played the bookseller, George Couloris, he was in a lot of stuff. I thought for a throwaway role, he was quite good. He was in Henry V. A lot of these people had a lot of stage acting roles too, which wasn't that unusual for television in the 60s. And most of these people were older and in their and continued working in the 70s and did really well. He was also part of Mercury Theater in the Air, too, so maybe that voice is what got me going. But very entertaining. Oh, I was going to mention on the Tim O'Connor, he also appeared in a couple of Twilight Zone episodes, so that's why he looks familiar to you as well. But at any rate, I was impressed. Bing Crosby Productions, you know, Mr. Bing Crosby, I think could attract and get some better actors in many of his shows. Not all the shows were really great quality, but they were always entertaining and always catered to a large audience on television. So I think that's what they were trying to do. I just think that this was just a little too limited in scope. They had good talent, reasonably good talent, and they just couldn't take it to the next level, which is probably why it never got greenlit as a series. There were many others that followed the same plot that came before that were much more entertaining and lasted longer. Okay, we're coming up on the final round. You can talk about all the things. We can talk about the shootouts, the helicopters, the forever dialogue, the cars. We can talk about, I don't know, the music. Oh boy, anything you want. This is your round to really sound off on The Stranger from 1973. Starting with Tony, what do you got?
Well, I'm sad to say not much. The music was pretty boring. The car chases were also pretty boring. My younger brother loved car chases in old 70s stuff, and I just never got into that. I especially disliked the shooting of the liquid oxygen tank producing an instant giant explosion. Yes, liquid oxygen is very dangerous, but that's not how it works. You have to have a leak, and the leak has to interact with something, and the something else has to start a fire, and then you get this wonderful, tremendous, torch bright, intense fire. But I didn't like that. That's not how it works. So yeah, not a lot to say about the effects or the music. Well, unengaging and unoriginal. There was no Star Wars or Alien or 2001 here. NT5TM.
All right, thank you, Tony. I'm going to try and give you something better to watch this coming week. Next up, Bill, W5DLT. Bill, your final comments, anything you want. You can rant as much as you want from KD5. I see it.
Well, I did have some couple thoughts on helicopters and Chrysler cars. It seems to me I was born in 1969, so being about 4 or 5, I can remember helicopters being a big deal as they flew over your house, or all the radio stations had a traffic helicopter. I'm trying to remember which tornado it was. I think it was in 1979. WHAS had a traffic helicopter that actually followed a tornado and reported on it, and actually saved some lives. So that was kind of a big deal back then. The other thing is the Chryslers were, I remember them being kind of popular back then, so it seems kind of funny that that was in this movie. Yeah, there was a lot of shooting. I was always amazed whenever they would be chasing people and they had the machine guns and stuff. So that was interesting to me. But yeah, nothing really stands out about the music except for the morning music on the little radio station there, the totalitarian, not New Order, but Perfect Order. So, yeah, that's about all I got. W5DLT.
All right, thank you, Bill. Thanks for your comments this evening. Next up, Virginia, NB5F. You can rant on whatever you want from KD5 ICX.
Okay, first, thank you for all the work you always do looking up all the actors. I am not that into actors, so I appreciate that you go and, you know, and that you have such a good memory for all these people, and you figure out who they all are, and because, yeah, I think they're all just a reasonable bunch of people who, you know, a lot of what they're given is not great. Let's see, on to that. This show, part of the hard part for me is that, and maybe it's just because it was such a bad copy of a videotape that looked like it was taped off of like the Saturday afternoon movie or something a million years ago. But then in general, just even for the time, I just think the look of it wasn't that great. It could have looked a lot more interesting. As far as the way it was shot, and yeah, the budgets were lower, but I just think it could have looked a lot more interesting visually. I don't remember the music; it was unrememberable. I did find the standard helicopter chase scene to be very standard. I've seen the movie Short Circuit about 4 billion times, and I realized that the big helicopter scene at the end of that was. This was so familiar. It you know, that was just kind of stock stuff that you did. There was just sort of a formula, I guess. In fact, I almost expected to see, based on that scenery, like that they always shoot in Southern California, I expected to maybe even see Vasquez Rock, you know. So I thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, yeah, the look of this was pretty standard, and could have been maybe the contrast a little lower, or the light a little brighter in places, or the color a little better. I don't know if that would have helped, but Anyway, and I will kind of finish up by responding to something that you were talking about in round one. You mentioned kind of all the different shows, and I'm not sure how it hooked in. I might have spaced out a little bit, but you were talking about J.J. Abrams and Lost. I never was a Lost person. I just didn't get into that. My brother liked it. I never did. I never did really watch it. I think I watched a couple episodes, and I was like, nah, this is just, it was kind of weird just to be weird. And now what's funny is that the mystery box type is actually a much maligned and criticized, almost genre type of storytelling in the world of endless kind of plot arc things where we get almost no closure, we get nothing episodic, everything is meant to like practically torture the audience, and there's no sense of any kind of there's no sense of any real through line in the story, and I think that his speech about that might have caused some problems for us, because that can be used effectively if it's intentional. Here's my hook to 2001. I haven't had one till now. That what Stanley Kubrick did in 2001, I think you can do something like that if you have an overall purpose, and it's maybe something like a movie. And a lot of series would have that open-ended feel to them because they didn't know how long they would run, but at least they were episodic. You would get like a sense of, like Quantum Leap or something, or Knight Rider or something like that. You don't know where it's, it never really kind of feels like it finishes as an overall thing, but it's not because of mystery. It's just because, it's just kind of an ongoing scenario and you get episodes. But I think the mystery box way of telling stories is kind of lazy, because even with Lost, it was criticized for the fact that there was no, intent. There was no ending planned. It was just like, oh, let's hook everybody in and get them all jazzed up for, they're going to figure out what this mystery is, and nope, it's just a mystery, and we don't have any responsibility to end it on any kind of closure or so that means they don't have to do anything except keep you guessing, and they don't have to come up with an ending. And I have not seen the final season of Stranger Things, but it has been, I've seen reviews of it that were very spoilery, so I kind of know what the deal was, and that it just became kind of a mess toward the end because of that kind of scenario. So Mr. J.J. Abrams has also been criticized for his handling of Star Wars movies, and I liked his Star Trek in a Bottle kind of Kelvin timeline thing, the first one. The later two had their problems, but and I'm kind of glad there were only 3 of those. I know they've kept trying to make more of them, but yeah, not a fan of how Star Trek is going these days either, for the same reason. So anyway, there's my rant. You asked for a rant, there it is. Back to Ned, NV5F.
Yeah, that qualifies as a rant. Well, multiple rants. I don't disagree. You have some good points there. Okay, well, I'm going to save my rant to the very end. Sean, KD9SOK, you get to rant. It's your turn from KE5ICX.
Yeah, this is KB9SOK. Well, I don't know that I really have any rants. But I I agree with what Virginia said there. Oddly enough, I just this last week watched an online thing where there were some different reviewers discussing various movies and modern stuff where a lot of stuff there is open-ended and there is no intent. And they basically said just what Virginia said, actually, word for word. It's lazy, you know. Unlike, 2001 where there was intent, which made the difference. So that seems to be a thing recently. And Lost was maybe one of those earlier ones that did that, where, they had no ending plan, had no real plan, just kind of winged it, and then they wonder why people were so upset at the ending. Lost was one I watched like 1.5 seasons. I actually did kind of like the first season. Season 2 was horrible, which was considered one of the worst seasons, and I just gave up after that. But anyway, back to, our movie. The special effects, there wasn't a whole lot of it at the very beginning, and the ship was pretty horrible, even for TV, even for 1973. It was basically about the size of the moon lander, and supposedly that thing went into deep, deep space. They'd been out there for months. I'm not quite sure how they would have done that in something that small. So that was pretty bad. And other than that, there was about a real special effect, other than a big explosion at the ending, which, as Tony pointed out, was more bad science. So and then we had our car chase scene with the helicopter. Helicopter did do some nice flying. Okay, but pretty standard. Music, wasn't anything too special. So not a lot to say on that part of it. I'm guessing this was a very poor copy. I'm assuming the original had much better lighting, but we didn't get that version. Because that might be the only copy left in the world. And Tom, thanks for the recommendations and mentioning those older shows. I've actually never watched The Prisoner. I've seen the remake, but I haven't seen the original. I guess I should try to dig that up. And maybe a couple of those others. Sounds like they're much better than this one. So I don't really have too much to rant about, really. So as always, I very much enjoyed the conversation to everybody. Always way more interesting than the movie, and looking forward to the next one. So back to net, TB9SOK.
All right, thank you, Sean. Thanks for your comments. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. I don't really have much to add. I pretty much made my comments about the film throughout. Technically, there's not much to add. I didn't mind the spacecraft so much. It kind of was that 70s look. Looks like it had a little bit of NASA thing going on. I'm not quite sure, but wasn't really all that wonderful. But it got the job done, and then everything else is just outdoor shots. And Vespucci's rocks, that's exactly what it looked like to me too. I was thinking that we were going to see it, but it never happened. So, but it's still in Southern California somewhere, so it kind of has that relief look to it. Anything else I can add? It's always fun to watch car chases in these tanks that people drive, the suspension and everything. They go bouncing around, the car comes to a stop, and it rocks back and forth because it's so darn heavy. I mean, it's like you're waiting for the tugboat to come in and secure the line, or they throw the tie line over to the side. Ahoy there! Because these cars are so gigantic. But this is definitely Chrysler stuff. That was a big thing back then. Ford would sponsor, Chrysler would sponsor. I think even AMC did it for a brief time. GM, I don't recall them sponsoring cars, but Ford and Chrysler would. And I think Chrysler only did it because Ford did it. If you ever watch the FBI, the old TV series, not the 10,000 new ones, but the FBI with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., he had a new car every year. He drove it down the streets of Washington, D.C. at the end of the credits. So he even had a Mustang one year. So very atypical of an older guy, but you know, quite the car was. Boy, I'm losing it these days. Whatever. Anyway, he had a new car every year. Okay, let's see. Next movie, I found. Audience rating gave it an 88%, so that was a surprise. But this is a sequel to Zombieland. This one's called Zombieland Double Cat with Woody Harrelson in it. I saw a little bit of it, and it was pretty funny. Maybe the preview, I'm not sure what it was I saw, but I don't know. We'll give it a shot. We saw the original film about, 5 years ago or something, so it's back. Overall, people liked it and gave it more stars than not. So we'll give it a shot. Hope you don't mind. It's a lot of super fake blood, I guess, really, but it's mostly about the comedy that goes along with it. If you've got something to suggest, by all means do so. I do not mind. I just pick something out of it. Generally what I do is I go look through the streaming stuff that's free and see if there's something that might be of interest that we haven't seen. If there's something you want to do again, let me know. I'll be more than happy to put it on. We'll find something that people will want to watch. So, at any rate, that's my best guess for now, unless I find something else. That'll be it. I'll send out, you'll get the info in your inbox tomorrow morning sometime. I hope it's in the morning, and we'll go from there. So with that, I'll say 7-3, everybody. We're going to end right on time. And maybe I'll go to bed. I'm not kidding. I'm going to sleep in tonight. Sleep in the morning. So remember, we'll do this all again next week. I really think I am getting tired. I'm starting to fall asleep, I guess. So we'll do this again next week. This is KE5 ICX. Now clear.
Thank you, Tom. And Aaron did text me a few suggestions. I will send them to you tomorrow. NT5TM.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it. I really do like you.